Welcome back. It's great to have Matt back again because there's a lot to talk about. It's been a little bit. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan. How about yourself?
I'm keeping afloat, trying to keep up with all the news and all the happening.
A lot going on.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And I have a lot of little things to touch on. I got a list over here, so don't mind me if I'm looking over there. But what's your gut tell you, given that we don't get to see these guys? We've gotten just a little bit of an inkling. The whole season thing, like you said earlier, the opt-outs, they're starting to mount. We're seeing more guys get placed on the COVID-19 list. I don't think that's done by any stretch of the imagination either. Right now, just to take your temperature, how do you feel about this season getting started on time, and do you think they can play a full slate?
Yeah, I was asked this earlier today, and I'll give the same answer I gave then. I haven't changed it yet, although this is something that can change. It seems like minute by minute. So I mean, I put starting the season at like 95% because I think it would have to take something drastic with there probably being an outbreak in the league, probably seeing Major League Baseball continue to have issues. I think would be an issue, but ultimately it's going to be what happens in the NFL. Mm-hmm. And opt-outs aren't going to be the biggest thing. I mean, it's going to be just the fact that if you start seeing outbreaks in the league, and I personally, I mean, I think it would have to, I see only it being a fairly drastic scenario where they don't start the season because I think the momentum is there and the league wants to try and get going no matter what. There's too much money on the line to not try and get it going. So I think it's going to happen. I think the bigger question, yeah, you asked it, which is, can they finish the season? And right now, I'd say I'm probably 50-50 on that. Yeah. Just because there's enough suggestion out there that the belief that things are continuing to get worse, and if there's a second wave this fall and winter, that it's just going to be added on top of that. And if that's the case, it's going to be really hard to see this continuing. But I think they're going to do their best they can, and it's going to come down to whether or not that there's any outbreaks and probably the specific teams and players. I mean, if you see every starting quarterback in the league with COVID-19, is that a product that the league wants to continue to put out there? I don't know. And, and what happens if you get into a situation with what the Florida Marlins have right now? If you have a team that can't play, are you going to have forfeits? Because in the NFL, there's no making up games. So, I think that certainly is that aspect of the idea that teams might have to forfeit this year is more likely to me now after what we've seen with Florida than it was a couple of days ago.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you. It's kind of where I've been leading down the path. And that leads me to the next topic. And like you said about the opt-outs, the Patriots have had quite a rush. I know everybody was real high on them getting Cam and being a contender again and that kind of thing. The Jamal Adams trade takes a big player out of the AFC, but I don't think he was going to drive the Jets to being competitive. So what does the opt-outs and what's going on right now, and the fact that the Chiefs, like we talked earlier, have the plan and they don't seem to be getting hit with a rash of opt-outs yet or COVID reserve designations yet, is it a competitive advantage or is it all still just a toss in the air?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a toss in the air and just, waiting to see what happens because, I think that the numbers of what we're seeing around the league makes it seem very unlikely that the Chiefs are only going to have one guy opt out. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that it's much more likely that you're going to see more than that because you're looking around the league and it's not just a matter of maybe players on teams who don't expect to compete are opting out. You're seeing guys, on teams that have Super Bowl aspirations, opting out. So, I mean, it certainly would not surprise me to see, since at this point, it looks like nearly every team in the league is going to have multiple opt-outs. So the idea that the Chiefs would have just one would seem to be counterintuitive. What I just hope is that I hope that everybody, treats them the same way that they did with LDT by and large, which don't hold it against them. I mean, you know what? Yeah, I get that it's, close to August 1st here and teams are going to be scrambling to replace guys who decide to opt out, but, give them a break. I mean, they're setting aside money for a reason. They're giving it up for a reason because they don't want to get sick and they don't want to, put themselves at risk. They don't want to put their families at risk. So I hope nobody gives these guys a hard time because I know that this is a difficult decision that they're all making.
I'm with you. And I mean, and a lot of guys think about the demographic of an NFL roster. There's a lot of young guys that are starting families and have babies, not just children, but babies. I think that makes a big difference when you're trying to weigh your options about playing a sport that will still give you an income enough that you can live off of without putting yourself or them at risk.
Yeah, I saw a number earlier today that, said that it's approximated to maybe 70% of NFL players are in the high risk category, because we know that the COVID-19 has affected African Americans disproportionately. Mm-hmm. It affects people with a high body mass index disproportionately. And on top of that, there's plenty of guys around the league that you may not know about it who do have underlying health conditions that would put them at risk. You're right. I mean, they've got families. There's a lot of NFL players that are also, closely engaged with their parents, sometimes even parents living at home with them. And sometimes those parents are in a high risk population. And to me, I mean, what we haven't necessarily seen yet, and I do wonder, is if we're going to see coaches opt out, because that's the population that's even greater. I mean, there's a lot more coaches who are in a high risk category than there are players. And I hope it's the same way. I mean, I hope the teams would be willing to let their coaches opt out without any punishment. And, because you hope that nothing happens to them, but, you'd hope that they'd get that option as well. Yeah. And, and there's other people too. I mean, I think of the people behind the scenes, because the equipment people, trainers, there's a lot of support staff that works alongside the players, and some of them are high risk too, but they may not have the option of, taking time off from work or deciding not to work this year because they may just not have a job anymore. Yeah. So that's the group that I think about too, because I think this is going to be tough for everybody.
Yeah, I heard somebody put it this way the other day that it really made sense. It's the people that work like the rest of us on a salary rather than a contract that are probably the most exposed in terms of overall risk because of how much they have to do. It changes the way you have to run your team, and I do feel like they're in a pretty good spot there. We saw a couple of players, like Juan Thornhill seems to be running again. It seems like the things outside of this viral problem seem to be coming along for this team. And if they don't get too many more opt-outs, I think this only strengthens their chances of taking it back to at least an AFC championship. I'm not going to say Super Bowl so early, but how do you feel about the product right now that they can put on the field?
Yeah, I mean, Andy Reid's talked about in the past that, what his comfort level is that they had to go out and play a game right now. Mm-hmm. And I think it'd have to be pretty high. I mean, we know that, hey, Mahomes and the pass catchers have gone against the guidance of the league and the NFLPA and gone out and worked out on their own. And Mahomes and, hey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire talked about that on Saturday about, that they felt pretty good about that. Edwards-Helaire is even, talking about how it was good for him just to get out there and stand next to Patrick Mahomes, so he doesn't kind of have that awe when he gets out there at practice now. He's kind of got that out of the way. But no, this team's highly confident. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. The challenge for them, I still feel like their biggest challenge is going to be maintaining that edge. And I think you've seen enough evidence that they're doing that. I mean, I think the attitude you've seen from Tyrann Mathieu on a lot of his social media and everything, I think you're seeing that he's got that. And if you've got guys like Mathieu and Mahomes that have that competitive edge, they're going to drive it into other people. I mean, and so I think it really helps to have two guys like that at the top of your roster on both sides of the football, because they're not going to let guys, slip off. They're not going to let them, not put in 100%. And Andy Reid, I think, is doing a great job of hanging that carrot out there. I mean, he knows that he's going to try and drive them, because that's the thing. I mean, it's going back to back is difficult, because sometimes you just think you can throw your helmets out there and win the game, and that's not the way it is in the NFL. So if they've got the same fire that they had last year, yeah, I think this team's in a great position right now to just go out and start playing right now.
And that comes from the experience and knowing the offense and Andy calling creative plays. But I like you said, the mental aspect is where you win this, not only against the virus, but against complacency. I think that's an edge that they have as well. I have one more question for you, and I don't want you to get carried away with the implication, but I felt like you had the best presence in the press room this week with the picture that they chose to use for you. Are you as happy with it?
Well, I guess I have to be reasonably happy with it because it's my Twitter avatar. So I guess I've had it out there for a while, and it is like 8 years old, 9 years old. So, gosh, actually, you know what? It might be 10 years old.
Hey, you win.
So I guess I look a lot younger in that thing. I'm probably a couple of pounds lighter, but so I guess the years will take advantage of the poundage. And it doesn't have the, you know, the mullet that I'm working on with my COVID-19 mullet. So
right.
And hey, I was the only one. I think I was the only one wearing a tie. So
well done. I didn't recognize that.
I got that advantage too, I guess.
I thought that was a pretty funny way for them to try and enliven it up there. Unique.
That was pretty good. And we were all wondering because we're on the Zoom call and Andy comes out there and he's like, yeah, it's nice to see all your faces out here on the chairs. And we had no clue. And I had somebody else on the call, you know, text me and was like, did he really say nice to see you on the chairs? He's like, what is he talking about? And then, yeah, Ted and PR sent out the picture of the room. So we got an answer to that. That was funny. That was good to see.
That's pretty creative. As are you and all of your time, folks. Make sure you're reading everything over at Chiefs Digest. You might be watching this over there at this point, but thanks for all the time, Matt.
Thanks, Ryan.
And folks, we'll be back with you next time. Check out RGR for the film reviews and all that coming this week. And then when we get to see something, we will let you know. Have a good day. Thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you next time.